Good morning, members of the press and those tuning on different media platforms. My name is Julian Willock, the Speaker of the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands. With me are Mr. Richard G. Rowe and Mr. Daniel F. Davies of Silk Legal. In January of 2021, a former governor of the Virgin Islands, in the name of Augustus Jasper, established a commission of inquiry without consultation with the democratically elected House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands. However, the same governor saw it fit to inform the United Kingdom press of the Commission of Inquiry before it was announced to the local media houses. The objective of the inquiry, according to him, was to see if there is evidence of corruption, abuse of office, or other serious dishonesty that has taken place in public office in recent years. A one-man commission in the name of Sir Gary R. Hickenbottom was appointed, and he has claimed that the work in support of the Commission of Inquiry is not a court. The jury is still out as to whether the Commission of Inquiry is a court, and I am sure the public can judge for themselves, who have seen how the proceedings have been conducted thus far. On the 10th hearing day of the Commission of Inquiry, Mr. Richard G. Rowe of Silk Legal inquired of the one-man commissioner as to whether the lawyers Billard Rawat, Andrew King, and Rhea Harrison, who are assisting the commission, were admitted to practice law in the Virgin Islands in keeping with Section 18 of the Legal Professional Act 2025 of the territory. The one-man commissioner responded in the negative and further stated that they did not need to be admitted to practice law in the Virgin Islands in order to carry out their duties. Mr. Hickenbottom, nevertheless, directed that the mentioned persons make an application to be admitted to practice law in the territory. The three Commission of Inquiry's lawyers then filed to be admitted to the BVI bar. However, a few months ago, I have instructed the House of Assembly attorneys, Silk Legal, to file an objection on the behalf of myself and the Deputy Speaker on the basis that the applicants have been practicing law in the Virgin Islands since March 2021 in breach of the Legal Profession Act. Their side raised the issue as to whether the Honourable Deputy Speaker and I had standing to make an objection. However, the court ruled last month that we did have standing and set a trial date for the case in October of this year. We had also raised other concerns, which I am not at liberty to disclose at this point, as the matter is alive before the court. Last week, I have further instructed Silk Legal to file an injunction to prevent the three Commission of Inquiry lawyers, Rawat, King, and Harrison, from doing any more legal work associated with the Commission of Inquiry until the judge rules after the October trial. Furthermore, and bearing in mind that the practice of law is not confined to the courtroom, we have decided to seek a determination from the court as to whether the BVI's law as to whether in BVI law it is one, lawful for lawyers who have not been admitted to practice law in the Virgin Islands to be appointed to act as barristers and or solicitors in Commission of Inquiries generally, and two, if it is lawful for lawyers who have not been admitted to practice law in the BVI to carry out legal duties in relation to commissions of inquiries generally. Of course, if the courts decide that points 1 and 2 are not lawful, there will naturally be consequential orders, which I am not at liberty to discuss at present. Ladies and gentlemen, my only interest is the rule of law, and that the laws of the territory must be good for the Speaker, the teacher, the waste management collector, the journalist, and countless of my brothers and sisters incarcerated at Her Majesty's prison. No one is above the law. I feel strongly that as head of the House of Assembly, the highest lawmaking body, as well as an independent branch of government, that good governance and transparency starts with obeying the laws and respecting the Constitution of the Virgin Islands. I will rest there for now, and before any question, I invite Mr. Rowe, Mr. Davis, if they have any intervention. Just press.
The speaker mentioned the Legal Profession Act 2025. It's just a correction. Is Legal Profession Act 2015. The Honourable Speaker has most eloquently set out the main point of this press conference. Consequently, I find myself unable to say anything further other than the fact that these proceedings are an incredibly important part and step in developing not only this jurisdiction's jurisprudence, but that of the regions, as it relates to commissions and tribunals of inquiries, and the constitution thereof. Thank you. I have nothing further to add.
Nothing? Okay. Media houses, the floor is now open. You'll identify your name and your media house, and you will point to whether the question is to be answered by myself or any of the attorneys. I recognize.
Good morning. Zan Lewis, ZBVI Radio. When do you expect word from this injunction filed? When do you expect word from the court on this injunction?
I'll defer to my attorneys.
Excuse me, sir. Bring up the mic and turn it on, please.
We're filing the application along with an affidavit of urgency, which you hope would allow us to have it heard at the soonest possible time that the single judge who is presently operating during this break, because this is the summer break from the High Court. So it is really up to the registrar to set that date for the hearing, at which we expect to have first a declaration. There has to be first a declaration from the court, and then an interim injunction thereafter.
The reason why I asked that question, sir, the Commission of Inquiry has an extended date, which I believe will go until December. Mm-hmm. We are now in the month of August. In other words, just a few months remaining. If the court decides to probably wait 2 to 3 months, close to the 4 months, the Commission of Inquiry will continue its hearing. So what you are trying to avoid will continue hearing of the Commission of Inquiry. In that case, do you not think it's very important to explain to them the importance of this, because you only have a few months to play with?
No, you have our intentions completely wrong. We are not seeking to have the Commission of Inquiry discontinued. What we are seeking to have is the unlawful and criminal practice of having attorneys who are not called to the bar be participating in the Commission of Inquiry. It is entirely open to whoever the parties are to select, have called persons who are lawfully involved in legal practice in the Virgin Islands. What we are concerned, as the Honourable Speaker indicated, we are concerned with the application of the rule of law, which applies to everyone.
So you have no problem with the three you're concerned about these 3 names that you called?
This is what we are concerned about.
So you have no problem with the Commission of Inquiry practicing, he himself carrying out his own work?
He's not in breach of the law as far as we are concerned. It is those who are practicing law under him that are the
But
cause
he's
of
also
concern.
involved in the line of questioning.
Well, he's allowed by the law.
Okay.
He's enabled and appointed by the governor, right? Who has certain executive powers, as in fact all the executive powers, and we have no issue with the commissioner per se. Those who seek to practice as barristers and solicitors, however, in breach of the Legal Profession Act, definitely.
Floor is still open.
Kathy Richards, JTV News. Good morning, everyone. For the sake of our edification, Honorable Willock, could you explain to us your authority in making this move towards the court? As you said, the court has found it that you have the authority to file. Could you explain for our knowledge how that is so?
Well, as you know that I am the Speaker of the House, which means that I'm the head of the legislative branch, head of the legislature. And you know that we have also hired, and this was announced a couple months ago, lawyers to protect the members of the House of Assembly who are not in the executive branch. So on that basis, knowing that the House of Assembly is a place where the laws are made, so I think I have a duty to ensure that all laws and the integrity of processes are protected, because the Legal and Professional Act of 2015 that was passed in the House of Assembly. So it is critical for us to make sure that laws and practices are upheld. It's not about the individual, it's not about me, it's not about any particular member, but it's about the fact that the laws of this country must apply to everyone. Her Majesty's prison is bursting with persons. Those are persons who have broken the laws. There's a penalty for breaking the law. They're in prison. So we cannot live in a society when we're talking about good governance and transparency when the rule of law only applies to some. That is a false start as we develop institutions.
Okay, with this being very active in the court of law, like you would have alluded to, why do you think it was so necessary for us to be here discussing this at this moment, as opposed to waiting until after October?
I'll defer to my competent legal team. Just press one.
It is my understanding that the Honourable Speaker believes in the principle of utmost transparency with the public. Therefore, he is informing the public of what his actions are, so they know how their money is being spent. That is the best I can answer in that regard.
In adding to that, this is not Julian Willock against the three lawyers. This is the Speaker of the House in my official capacity, which means that public funds will be committed to this. So as my learned friend rightly said, it's a matter of transparency. These are some of the action that's been taken that will cost money. And there is money in the budget allocated in the House of Assembly budget for these independent legal matters.
Okay, when were those allocations made? Was it having come across this particular issue that the monies were budgeted for this?
No. I think this was about close to 10 years ago. A decision was made to put money in the budget, the House of Assembly budget, where any member can challenge any matter of a constitutional nature. Yeah, so it didn't just start with my tenure. I believe it went back to the second or even the first House of Assembly, but I will check the specific dates.
Okay, and you know for a fact that having heard the money part of it, where taxpayers' dollars are what are going to be used to finance this legal proceedings, the discussion about timeliness and whether this is absolutely necessary, especially as we are facing a pandemic which has put the territory's budget under extreme strain. Why is it so necessary to expend monies towards this particular process?
Kathy, what I will say to you is what Martin Luther King said when he was asked a similar question. The time is always right to do what is right. Um, if the economy was booming, we would have had somebody saying maybe that money could have gone to education or health or something else. So whatever time frame that you use to do anything with public funds, it will always have its critics. That's the nature of the politics, that's the nature of the political class. But there's always a time to do right. It happens so that the Commission of Inquiry is happening now. So um, if it's happening now, then we have no other choice but to um, make our filing now. You know, in the midst of a pandemic, it's continuing. So we're left with no other choice but to do it now.
If I may also add, you asked about the importance of having this done. Well, it's an incredibly important part, as I mentioned earlier, of developing this jurisdiction and this region's jurisprudence. And I say that because, particularly in the former matter where the Speaker and the Honourable Deputy Speaker were granted standing, there was a lack of jurisprudence in respect to who can object to someone being called to the bar or being admitted to practice as a solicitor. And so that judgment was really not necessarily first of its kind, but among the first of its kind within this jurisdiction and within the region. And so that is contributing to good governance.
Good morning, Esther here, BVI Platinum News. I have a question for you, Mr. Richard Rowe. Silk Legal was contracted by the House of Assembly and not central government to represent the members. What is the contracted amount to represent the House of Assembly members?
There's no contracted amount. It is a contract which determines itself by the number of hours that we spend on the COI. I can assure you that it is significantly less, and we say so with ire, than those are contracted by the executive, the government. Our services are offered at a far lesser rate and for greater consideration of the well-being of the territory as a whole. So you won't find us anywhere near 100,000, 3 million as reported or otherwise. There's been no billing like that from us. It has been significantly less, and the Speaker will confirm that.
Well, if I can only add to that to say that the issue for me is not only the financing, the issue for me is, as a speaker of one of the independent branches of government, is the reputation of this country. That's what's at stake. Remember, the Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary announced in the United Kingdom, in London, that the BVI is corrupt, that the BVI has gangs, that that there was some X amount of money approved by the House that was misspent. Those were the things said about the territory. So what is at stake here beyond the money? And I'm not suggesting that money is not important, and I know that my members tells me every day about the cries of people who are hurting. I'm sensitive to that. But what is at stake beyond the cost is the good name of the British Virgin Islands. As a financial service jurisdiction, we have to protect our reputation. And when these kind of statements are made in London, and my friends are calling me from London, from the United States, from Australia, from Canada, from South Africa, from Nigeria, telling me about what is said in papers, that to me requires that the House of Assembly and perhaps central government do whatever it takes to protect our reputation.
Right.
But as Mr. Rowe said, we will not bust the budget.
Right, but there is a cost, whether it is below $100,000. But what are we dealing with? Can we get some idea?
Well, I'll prefer that information not be disclosed at this time because there's not a fix, as Mr. Rowe rightly said, there's not a fixed rate. It depends on the hours, it depends on the instructions, depends on a lot of other things.
Right.
But let's also look again at the context of what we are up against. Persons who have already labeled this jurisdiction, labeled members in the House of Assembly as corrupt in London. That is what at stake. So if you're labeling my members, whether it's the fourth house, the second house, the third house, first house, as corrupt and wasting government money, then I think it's important, as the speaker, that I fight with the executive branch to protect the good name of this territory.
Mr. Rowe wanted to say something.
Just to assure you, you will notice at many of the hearings where we do not determine its relevance, that Mr. Rabat will say cyclical absent. It is intentional. We're not going to build this government or the people of the Virgin Islands for involvement when we are not needed, when it is not necessary. But you can be assured that we are spending the time watching it on the YouTube. So we are quite aware of the expense. We're quite aware of what you are going through with COVID. I had it. And our duty is, as indicated quite clearly by the Honourable Speaker, to protect the reputation of this territory. And that we will do. No other parties involved in the legal process have been taking these steps. We see them necessary. There are no Queen's Counsel here. We're counsel for the Virgin Islands.
I have a question for you, Honorable Speaker. I believe it was during the sitting on Thursday that you mentioned that you would have proceeded to write to the AG relating to the naming of companies in the House. Where are we with that?
Well, I don't wish to disclose that at this press conference. I think the Honourable Attorney General has given us in the House off camera our views, and I will consult with members to see if that something needs to be officially sent out.
But you did mention that you were going to do that.
Well,
So
I did mention,
confirm or
and
deny
I
whether
am
it
confirming that the Attorney General, the Honourable Attorney General, Honourable Dawn Smith, have given us her views on that matter, but it was in camera. So I will consult with the honourable members to seek permission or authorization whether or not it is necessary to have something sent out to the media houses. But I did what I said I would do.
Right. Your controversial statement regarding vaccine came at a time when there are pushbacks around the region
Oh, which controversial statement is that?
in terms of persons should be mandated, with the exception of medical and religious beliefs, even regarding the violence towards the Vincentian Prime Minister. Do you still stand by your statements?
I really don't want to get distracted with that, and it's an important question. The purpose of this press conference is for me to announce that I've given Silk Legal instructions to file an injunction where the 3 lawyers that have not been called to the bar in this jurisdiction not continue their work until the court ruling in October. In terms of my statement, I was at the time speaking for myself. That's my personal opinion. It does not represent the House of Assembly's opinion. It does not represent the government of the day. Actually, the government of the day have been adamant that it's a voluntary process. They have been consistent and adamant. My personal opinion, as Julian Willock, was unless you have a religious a reason, or your doctors say you cannot take this vaccination, that being vaccinated should be mandatory. That's my personal view.
And you stand by that?
I stand by
right
my
now.
statement. Again, it's my personal view, and it's not the position of the House of Assembly or the government of today. Let's be clear about that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's get back to the COI. Mr. Willock, you all need to realize that the media have a job also to do. While you continue to say that the reputation of the territory is important, I agree with that. What you are doing, or what Silk is doing, comes with a cost. So by you saying now with it's like the premier, like what the premier said, one comes, the cost is not so much important. It's the reputation of the territory. And as I said, I agree with that. But that is just an easy
Well,
way.
I'm just.
Let me finish.
You said
sir.
the premier said that. When did he say that?
No, he said that in the House of Assembly.
Oh, I was presiding.
No,
in the
I'm
House
not
of-
reminding you. I'm
and
just
I-
telling you
I
what
didn't
happened.
hear- I didn't hear.
I'm saying, sir,
So I'll have to
Wait.
go back to the notes.
what you are saying is just a way of avoiding the question. Mr. Rose said that it's much lower than what the premier said, $3 million. So he has an idea what you're talking about. There must be a figure, and you all need to stop avoiding the question and tell the media, tell the people in the Virgin Islands what is the cost, what is the likely cost. The premier said they've already spent over $3 million, and the cost allocated is $5 million.
Okay,
How much money has already been
Zan,
spent?
Zan, let's not mix up things. Let's be very clear. There is 3 branches of government. There's the legislative, executive, and judicial. I could speak for the legislative branch. I cannot speak for the
No,
executive
no, I'm not
branch.
asking you to speak for that, sir. But what I'm
Okay.
saying, sir.
So I don't want people to think that whatever figure you just call also includes this branch.
No,
of
no,
government.
no, I'm not saying that, sir. What I'm saying, sir, the Mr. Rowe talk about is much lower than what was quoted earlier by the premier, right? It's lower than that, about $100,000. So he has an idea what we are talking about. No, you
Okay,
must have an idea what we are. You
I'm
must
gonna
have a
I'm gonna
cost.
I'm gonna put that question to rest right now to simply say that we're not in a position yet to give you a cost
You can't see how much spent so far.
of we'll have to go back and check.
So you're saying,
Mm.
so you're saying, Mr. Speaker, that you, along with Silk Legal, are unable to say at this time how much money has been spent so far in the work done with the Commission of Inquiry. That's what you're saying.
I am
You're
sa-
unable to say now.
I am saying, Mr. Lewis, that I will. I'm not the accounting officer for the House of Assembly. I will go back and check with the accounting officer and get back to you on how much have been spent so far.
Because you're unable to say now.
It's an ongoing cost.
I agree. Because you're unable to say at this point how much you have already spent.
Is that a question or that's your statement? That
I'm asking you if that is the situation because you're unable to say so now.
If I said to you I'm going back and check, what do you derive from
You-
that,
you
Mr.
can't-
Lewis?
You're unable to say no at this point.
Is that what you have derived?
Yeah. Anyhow,
Okay.
I have. I think you're avoiding the question still, though. Both the legal and you. You're avoiding the question as regards because you are saying, sir, Mr. Rowe, you're saying that it is not like this amount. So there's a figure in your head which you're not telling us.
No, listen, I understand you. the difference to the Speaker. We have received the deposit for the contract. And we have that, and that is all we have received.
What is the deposit?
$30,000.
So why didn't say so long time, sir?
But you didn't ask me about that. You asked me how much is it going to cost. And I can't say because the hours, we don't know how long this will be extended.
So you had a terrible question.
So I can't answer. You see, Vance, ask a better question.
Your
sorry.
Your inability to ask proper questions to get proper answers.
You're trying to make a comeback, Mr. Speaker.
No, it's not. I could answer. $30,000 our deposit.
Exactly. Well, when the question was asked,
but that was Mr. Lewis. That was not your question. Your question was what is the cost?
When the question was asked earlier by the reporter, when the question was asked earlier as regards the cost, you did not answer the question. There's nothing.
Okay, Zan.
We have received the deposit.
Silk Legal have just informed you that they have the only payment they have received if their deposit. Is there any other question surrounding the?
No, now we have an idea how much is likely to
that is
so far. Now we have an idea.
It's about 100 times less than other billing, eh?
Okay.
1,000 times? Okay.
If I could ask one more question, please. Mr. Rose said it's not the intention to stop the inquiry, the Commission of Inquiry, but to make sure that the proper procedures done by these three lawyers getting permission to practice law in the Virgin Islands. Some time ago in a press conference, concerns have been raised by how the local lawyers are being treated, right? When they're just there.
Who raised that concern, sir?
Mr. Rowe, talk about they're just there when you were called to be as a witness. They were just sitting there and they were not basically allowed to intercede or to be a part.
You mean at the Commission of Inquiry?
Yeah, at the Commission of Inquiry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if the whole move just to make sure that these people have the authority to practice the law. And so you have no problems in the way in which the Commission of Inquiry is going, the current way in which it's being conducted. You wanted to continue along that line, but only to make sure that these three lawyers have the right to practice? Is that what you're saying?
On the contrary, I raised very clearly at the last press conference we had here that the commissioner is acting in breach of the principles of natural justice. All that we have had so far is these performing this criminal activity, Rabat and the two solicitors, asking questions of our elected representatives without allowing us to lead them in the questioning, to cross-examine any of the other witnesses. And we have an absolute monopoly. We challenge that. We have been told that we are going to have the opportunity to bring our own witnesses, because these Englishmen and women do not understand the history of the Virgin Islands. Their culture is quite different from ours in the Caribbean. And to judge us by their standards without their having a clear appreciation of the history and the progress of the Virgin Islands would be a fallacy. So we expect, we have asked, and we will demand to have the right to cross-examine, to bring rebuttal evidence, as is required by the jurisprudence in the region. So it's not over. It's just the beginning.
Gentleman Cathy here again. Could you permit me just the three other questions? The first one is to you, Mr. Rowe. You said earlier that not necessarily all the hearings you go to, and that is deliberate. What are the standards that determine what time you go to the hearings and to represent who, or to listen in for who?
Okay. We have been contracted to represent the Speaker and the non-ministerial officers in the legislature. Those are 7 in number. Our representation of them is advisory. and supportive. With respect to the rest of the other activities, we have no place. We could be there, we could be billing, but we consciously do not. We work only insofar as the directives and the interests of those members of the House are concerned. So we are always watching at home or in our office the proceedings. We keep full records of what you report in the media. There's a huge file on that, which helps us keep in tune. But it is only fair to the taxpayers of this territory, of which we are too, that our representation be limited to what we have been contracted to do. Represent 7 persons. When it comes to the later stage, we will certainly want to carry before the commission historians, sociologists, so that this one-man commissioner can understand that he cannot come in and judge us from afar by his own English standards, but must understand the Virgin Islands by virtue of its history and its development.
Okay, so coming right back to the issue of what it will cost this territory and the taxpayers, should you be able to win that fight in being able to do rebuttals, present new evidence and all of that, would definitely increase your presence before the commissioner, which indeed would carry up the numbers of time that you would be required to appear, hence a higher budget.
Let's understand the stakes here, as demonstrated with the takeover of the Turks and Caicos. What it means, and my partner alluded to my saying this a little earlier, the 3 pillars of the Virgin Islands, which has kept this territory and this melanated people strong, will be kicked out from under our feet. Trade licenses will be opened to the competition of the billionaires and the large department stores and the like from England. Work permits will be abolished for them. Landholding titles will be abolished. And so therefore anyone with millions with land permits can come in and purchase all the land and make it so expensive for the local that will become like Bermuda or Cayman. So there is a lot at stake. The minimal fees that we are charging are insignificant to the losses that we as a people will suffer as a whole. When there is this wholesale takeover, there will be no legislature. The governor will rule from top. They'll bring in foreign civil servants to head the various departments. Okay? So what is at stake is so significantly greater than the minimal fees we are charging. Because, and we throw down the gauntlet. Have you been hearing anything else from the other team? Who has been battling this? Who has been going out and finding these lacuna and the weaknesses and the breaches of the law by the commission? It is us. And we are nowhere near 3 million in billing. 300 times, about 3,000 times below that.
Okay, I understand my position is not whether or not you should or should not, but my position is to determine whether you are able to justify for the public's understanding and appreciation what is being put into this and what is at stake, for clarification of my position.
So do you understand why we think it's necessary? Historians must understand why it is that the master who beat a slave was hung in the Virgin Islands. You must understand why it is that when slavery was not feasible and profitable, that the English slave owners sold the land to native Virgin Islands people who were enslaved. They will understand why it is that abandoned again as a bird sanctuary, the people, without the help of the English, built up these territories. Now you want to come and take it. Because that has been your nature. You're rapacious exploiters.
If I could just clarify something also, and I want to make clear um, to the public, and I don't necessarily want to contradict my learned friend, that there's no fight between what the executive branch is building and what the legislature is building. I know that it's a different in terms of figures, and that's clear as raised by Attorney Rowe. But what one ought to understand is that the legislative branch, we are not trying to stop the Commission of Inquiry. The Commission of Inquiry, although many of us disagree with the approach and how it was set up constitutionally. There's a Commission of Inquiry Act, although it goes back to the 18 something, but there is an act and it was set up by the governor constitutionally. But all we are saying is that if you are coming to tell us you're violating the Register of Interest Act, you're violating this, you're violating that, you ought to be able yourself to set some sort of example that you have an interest in the rule of law. Because as I said in my statement, Her Majesty's prison is filled with young men and women who have broken the law in this territory. Some of them are innocent, they're waiting on their trial. But those who have been tried and found guilty are in prison. So we cannot have in the BVI a judicial system for us and one for them. They can come, not follow the laws of the BVI blatantly, and then tell us about good governance and transparency. That is a contradiction. So I am not here in my private capacity as Julian Willock. I am here representing the legislature, that is the place where laws are made. And the laws are made for everyone, for the speaker, for the teacher, for all persons in the territory. And there must be one rule of law. If you get into a situation where the laws are for us, but not for them, then that's a challenge. That is the reason why I've instructed Silk Legal to pursue this. There must be the rule of law for everyone. That's transparency. That's good governance. That's what you're inquiring about. So if you're inquiring to see if we're doing that, and here you are, blatantly violate that, then something tells me, as some will say, smell a rat.
Is one other option that Mr. Rowe didn't mention, mentioned Turks and Caicos. The other option would be what I would say is an Anguilla option, where you have the entire elected assembly, you have your premier or chief minister, as the case may be, but it is ruled through the governor. So here it is, you're paying the salary for the entire House of Assembly, but they're powerless, and the person that actually exercises the power is the governor. And I don't think that is either a palatable situation for the BVI, and it would be incredibly unjust where a person is constantly complaining to their district representative or at-large member and is unable to get anything done because the House of Assembly is emasculated. That is something that we cannot allow, and that is what is at stake. The other part, which you alluded to earlier, about the role of Silk Legal. The role of Silk Legal, apart from anything else in these proceedings, is to ensure that the members that are represented by us are afforded due process or procedural fairness. And that is the fundamental aim of Silk Legal, To this end, we have had some measure of success, or we hope that we'll have some measure of success in the coming months when the Commission of Inquiry resumes. But I will not go further than that because different protocols and procedures are may be adjusted to facilitate our demands, but we are not sure what they're going to come with at this point, so I can't go further than that.
Okay, so I can take two. I think I have. Um, Honorable Willock, what's your position in terms of the Commission of Inquiry continuing while the territory battles with COVID-19? Do you think it should halt until we come to some sense of stabilization?
Well, as the Speaker of the House, I try to restrain myself from always giving an opinion.
But you give your personal opinion from the seat.
I, I will prefer not to answer that question. I don't want to enter into the political space. I want to stay within my boundaries and my jurisdiction as a speaker. Speakers are to be impartial. Speakers in some jurisdiction are to be seen and not heard, etc., etc. But I would prefer not to comment on that. All,
Put on the coat and make
all,
it.
all I will say is that we have instructed Silk Legal to file an injunction so that the three lawyers who have not been called to the BVI bar, in keeping with the Legal and Professional Act of 2015, that matter be addressed.
But
And I
I
don't,
did
and I
not.
don't want you to lose sight of the purpose
No,
of
no,
the
I
question I'm raising.
haven't. But you
Okay.
opened the floor and there's no other questions being asked. So I'm asking what's at the top of my head. And you said you don't want to enter the political space, but I'm not asking you a political question because you made a statement on the seat with your thing on. I don't know. I don't
It's
really
called a
know
wig.
the wig on. You made a personal statement while there, so I don't see it as unfair for you to be asked and give an answer to a question that is non-political while you were sitting here as the Speaker of the House.
My statement on the issue of vaccination, that was uh, regional, international.
And so is this.
That's a worldwide thing.
To interrupt, to have a commission of inquiry,
Kathy.
which we've heard. Could you permit me here? You know, I don't get into
Kathy
the back
Richards.
and forth on this.
Yes, Kathy
The
Richards.
issue, Honourable Willock, is that we see it as well, demanding heavy resources, human and financial, from our government entities and others, public and private, to participate and have this been done in an effective and timely manner. Now we all are feeling the extreme strain of what is happening around us, and I want to know from you if it is your feeling that this should be put to the halt until things come to a certain level of semblance.
Kathy, what I will say, I'll say two things to you. That I have heard the cries of honorable members, particularly ministers of government, who continue to say that they can hardly get anything done because civil servants are caught up in providing tons and tons of document for the Commission of Inquiry. So it almost paralyzes both the executive branch and the legislative branch. And two, what I will want to see stop is the injunction that we filed, that Silk Legal was instructed to file, that the three lawyers participating in the Commission of Inquiry who have not been called to the bar, that they not be allowed to continue until the October trial. That's what I would like to see.
If I come in with the last question. One last question here. It's not the first time we are hearing from you, Mr. Speaker, and from your legal team about these three lawyers who you all say are practicing illegally in the BVI as regards the COI. Not the first time. We hear that cry before. The Commission of Inquiry started in January. We are now 8 months. It will soon finish. Just a few months ago, and it will finish.
I'm sorry, you know when it's going to finish?
I say it may soon finish.
Oh, okay.
It may soon finish.
Because it's my understanding that it just got an extension.
The extension, I believe, carry okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it may soon finish. I'm not saying it will finish. It may soon finish. And you are 8 months into the COI. What took you so long? What were you waiting on? What took you so long before you filed that injunction? Why that injunction did not file earlier when it just started? 8 months after you filed an injunction? What pushed you 8 months after to push that injunction?
Well, the fundamental issue is knowledge. It says that you must know that these people, in order to file an injunction or to make an objection, you must know that these people haven't been called to the bar. Now, the first time we heard of it is when Mr. Rowe inquired about it. We had no knowledge that these people were not called to the bar previously. And
when you knew that they were not?
Fourth session?
I think it's the 10th hearing. The 10th hearing day. That's when Mr. Rowe inquired.
What month is that?
Probably June.
I remember that
Yeah.
we made the application or objection as soon as possible after that. That is why you've had the decision that the Honourable Speaker and the Deputy are persons who have locus standi, legal standing, to object. And we could not do an objection before they made an application.
Yeah.
You can't put the cart before the horse.
So, in light of that injunction,
We haven't got it.
yeah, no, what I'm saying that in light of what you're saying, you know, they filed this injunction, and they're hoping to resume sitting very soon, right? They are still allowed to continue.
Precisely what we want to prevent. If it is that you are, take it by stages. You are required to be called to the bar before you can practice law, or in the Virgin Islands. Here it is, we have discovered that these persons have not been called to the bar, and they are waiting a decision in October as to if they will be allowed to be called to the bar. What we are saying, it therefore follows logically that for that period, from whenever the COI resumes to when a decision is made, they should not be allowed. And that's a simple equation. You can find other counsel, have them called without objection, because we can't object then, and proceed with the COI. But these three persons who have as we are concerned, have committed criminal actions, because it's a crime.
So charges should be brought against them.
It's a matter which for the Director of Public Prosecutions. I wrote her about it as soon as we discovered. I cannot indicate what her answer is.
Allow me quickly to ask you this explanation. So it's the position of the commissioner, Sir Gary Hickenbottom, that this is not a trial as such. It is an inquiry. So if it's an inquiry, those persons who are working with him are not necessarily practicing law. Am I to understand that?
No. You see, the practice of law is far beyond the courts.
Okay.
In fact, 90%, if I would dare say, of the practice of law is outside of the courthouse. So, and this is not an inquiry, Let us give it its proper name. It's an inquisition. You remember those, if your history, the Spanish Inquisition, with the Roman Catholic Church stretching people on the rack and torturing them and the like? without resort or retort. This is an inquisition.
By your description
No,
or by
the,
what it is?
by the commissioner's description. He has made that very clear to me and to us. Inquisition it is.
I believe you'll be able to actually find that quote in fourth the fourth hearing date, I believe it was, where Mr. Rowe and I made an application to the Commission of Inquiry to be allowed to represent the 7 non-executive members of the House of Assembly. At that point, Mr. Rowe had raised the fact that it was his view, and our view, actually, that this was a fishing exercise, and in reply, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm open to correction, the commissioner replied that this isn't a fishing exercise, it is an inquisition. And I think that's where you'll find that particular quote.
Okay, in conclusion, Zan, you look like you had one more question, or that's just. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, members tuning on various media platforms, this is an exercise to ensure that the rule of law applies to everyone. I have no personal axe to grind with anyone. As the lawyers clearly point out, that the commission of inquiry could continue. Perhaps they can get new lawyers properly called to the bar, etc. The only issue here is the 3 lawyers who have been practicing for March, that the injunction seeks that they not continue until the full hearing of the commission of the case in October of this year. We have already won one victory, in which the court, Justice Vicky Ellis, have already decided that both myself and the Honourable Deputy Speaker, that we have standing to object, hence the October trial. With that said, I thank the media for coming. I thank all the technical staff, and I wish everyone a thank you.